Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me tonight on the program is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And tonight we're going a little bit art house. We're going to be taking a look at the latest movie by Terrence Malick. It's a film called A Hidden Life, and it's a little bit interesting the way this movie is coming out in Australia, because it is an art house movie, but because it's coming out from a big studio, it's actually being put into major cinemas, because this movie is a Fox Searchlight film, which means basically here in Australia it's a 20th Century Fox / Disney production now, so it's getting into all of the big places rather than just the little places that you would normally expect. Now, the movie tells the story of Franz, played by August Diehl, and he is someone who has what you would call a conscientious objector, someone who has been signed up to join the Nazi Party but refuses to fight for them because he doesn't believe in what they're standing for. At the same time, we also see how that affects his wife Fanny, played by Valerie Pachner, and what happens to her back in her home village as he is ultimately taken away and jailed for refusing to fight for the Nazis. Now, like most Terrence Malick movies, the story is pretty light on, so that's pretty much the entire story that I've told there, with the suspense coming about what is actually going to happen to both Fanny and her family, and also Franz, where he is. So, mate, I guess the best way to start off by talking about this movie is asking where you stand on Terrence Malick's films.
Terrence Malick, he's definitely, this is something that we've been talking about, he's definitely a director. It's kind of hard to appraise his work, because he's such a, he makes such non-traditional style movies, very much kind of like Gaspar Noé, the way I personally really love Gaspar Noé movies, but they're really hard to recommend to people because they are so different. The way that he tells the story is so different, and the story that he chooses to tell is so different. So in the end, you really just have to watch his films and see how they strike you and how they're presented, and just if you think that the technique that he used and the stories that he's given you, whether you think they really worked for you or not. This movie, for me, I think is it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think that the story itself of a conscientious objector Nazi, is something, it's interesting and it's worth telling. And the performances in it were great. August Diehl and Valerie Pachner were amazing in it. The locations and how it's shot, all of that's really great. But I think that Malick, the way he's told the story, and really also how long it's taken him to tell the story, what's basically kind of a very light story. I think the movie runs into some problems there. What did you think of it, dude?
Yeah, look, for me, Terrence Malick, he's one of those frustrating directors for me, because I do love some of his movies. I love To the Wonder, and I love Song to Song, and I know a lot of people didn't like Song to Song, but I think they were going into that movie expecting like an Almost Famous style movie, telling the story of a musician, and I loved it, the way he shot it. And the same with To the Wonder, I thought that was fantastically shot. But he feels like he's someone who's on a whole different level. I mean, this guy graduated from Harvard. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's got an intelligence about him that just, it blows my mind, like how intelligent this guy is. And I see his way of making movies the same as what Quentin Tarantino has his own style. Like, a lot of people didn't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then the defense would be, oh, well, it's very Tarantino. I find the same with Terrence Malick. When people, like, smash his films, I say, but it's very Terrence Malick. Like, that's the way he makes movies. And I'm the first to admit that some of his films fail, as far as I'm concerned. Like, The Tree of Life, to me, that was just a waste of time, watching it in the cinema. I think I gave it one of the worst scores I've ever given a film. I either gave it a 0 or a 1. I can't remember what I gave it, but I didn't think much of it. But then, yeah, movies like Song to Song and To the Wonder, I've given maximum stars to because I've thought they are really, really good films. And I'm kind of in the middle with this film because I did like the story that was being told, and I liked the way that Malick handled some of it, but I also felt that at times the film was very repetitive in the way that it did things, but at the same time, there's a beauty to the way that Malick makes a movie. Like, every single shot in this film looks like it should be in the trailer. Like, it just... You watch a movie sometimes and you know that a director has done a certain shot just because he wants it in the trailer, like a camera zooming in really quick on an actor or something like that. Terrence Malick does all of that, like, and frequently throughout the film. But I did think at times in this movie that the story became very repetitive, especially when it was showing what was happening to Fanny back in the village. It felt at times where it was like, okay, so we've seen 5 or 6 different people now kind of shun her because of what her husband is doing. But also the annoying thing that I find that Malick does sometimes is something that you really want to see, he doesn't show. And in this film, he does that by having some of the conversations in German and some in English. And there are times when people are yelling at Fanny in the town, and you want to know what they're saying to her, but you don't because it's in German. Likewise, at one point during Franz's trial with the Nazis, this guy just goes ballistic in the courtroom and starts yelling at him, but it's all in German. So as an English-speaking audience and with no subtitles, you're kind of left there wondering what the hell is this guy yelling about, because that can change the whole tone of what's happening. Like, is he just furious that Franz refuses to fight for the Nazis and he takes it like as a personal slight because he is a German soldier? Or could it be like the guy spilt coffee on himself that morning and just in a bad mood? Like, it doesn't give you any kind of hint at why this guy is reacting this way and what is being said. And I think that's probably my biggest fault with this film.
Yeah, I really did have a problem with that as well. I believe most, if not all, of the cast, actually, they are Austrian or German actors, and so they can speak German, and it's noticeable. They're doing the thing, the Hollywood movie thing of you have foreign actors speaking, you have actors in this movie that's set in Germany, and they're playing German or Austrian characters, and they're speaking English when they need to, except for, like, whenever it's kind of really relevant to the plot, they're speaking English, and whenever it's background characters arguing or whatever, then it's just, as far as the film, it seems as far as the filmmaker is concerned, that could just be gibberish. It's almost like that scene that you mentioned in the courtroom. On the script, it could have just written German Nazi man yells in German.
Yeah,
you know, that could be all that was written down, because that, as far as us, the audience, that's all that we're getting.
Yeah,
that's all. Like, what exactly is he yelling about? Is he yelling because Franz is showing a lack of respect for the court, or, as you say, because of what he's doing, or any of that stuff? We don't, like, I don't speak German. I don't know what the hell the guy's talking about, and that's something that was really a problem throughout this movie, because even Franz and Fanny themselves would speak German throughout the movie, but it was like some scenes, like most of the scenes when they're talking, and those are the scenes that are actually, it's important to know what the characters are speaking, then they're speaking English. But if it's not and it's just background, then whatever, they're just speaking German. And that was it's a very hacky, schlocky Hollywood movie thing to do. That's the kind of thing that villains in James Bond movies do.
Yeah.
And, like, characters in, like, World War II video games, like, Germans speak English when you actually need to understand what they're saying, and then otherwise, who cares?
Yeah.
And I thought that it was there was a very weird thing. I honestly can't tell what exactly the artistic what the creative thought behind that might have been, because it cheapens the movie. And for like Terrence Malick, this is a 3-hour Terrence Malick film. I understand that there's a lot of people who kind of veer away from subtitled movies, and they prefer movies like the Tom Cruise Nazi one.
Oh, Valkyrie.
Valkyrie, thank you.
Yep.
Movies like Valkyrie and those kind of movies that star Hollywood, like English-speaking actors, Hunt for Red October, and even Schindler's List. When they speak English-speaking actors, I think it's okay to have them pretending to be German and just speaking in English with German accents. But when you've got a movie like this that stars a Austrian or German cast, and you've made the decision to just have them speaking English, it feels very, very cheap. Like,
yeah.
the kind of audience that are going to watch a 3-hour-long Terrence Malick film are the kind of cinema goers who are going to be okay with reading subtitles for that time.
Yeah. And yeah, it feels weird, like, using the word cheap to describe a Terrence Malick movie, because Terrence Malick he's almost a perfectionist. Like, to give an example, the scenes in this film that are set, like, in a courtroom, Terrence Malick didn't go and recreate a German courtroom like so many people would on a sound studio. He actually went to Berlin and went to the building known as and I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly, the Kammerreich building, which was the Center for Allied Control during World War II. In other words, it was the actual building where that trial would have been held. And this is based on a true story. I should preface that as well. So it's like he is such a perfectionist when it comes to making a movie that he won't recreate something. He'll actually go to the spot. And like, a lot of this movie is shot in the mountainous areas of Austria and looks visually spectacular. Like, take what you've seen in Sound of Music and times it by 100. Like, he will go and do that, and he'll hunt down a building where these trials would have happened. But then we'll do something really lazy, like, okay, I'm just going to let that actor speak in German and not give my English audience any idea of what's being said or what's being done. And the only way, to me, that would have worked would have been if Franz didn't speak German. So we're watching it from his point of view, and there's a discussion going on in German that he didn't understand. But we've already learnt from earlier on in this movie that Franz can speak German. So, that to me kind of, like, as you said, kind of cheapened it a bit, because it took away from that perfection that we're used to seeing in Terrence Malick films. But the one thing I think that this movie did kind of keep up was the suspense of when Franz was in jail. My comment before about repetitiveness was more about what's going on with Fanny in the town. It's not so much what's happening to him in the jail. I think I might have liked to have got, like, a little bit more insight into some of the other prisoners that he was being kept with. Like, I watch shows like Orange is the New Black and Oz and stuff like that, and part of what helps you learn more about a prisoner as a character is when you find out what they've done compared to how they act. Like, I remember there was a character in Orange is the New Black where you found out she was a killer, but she was one of the nicest people in the prison. And that, to me, brought a whole new element to her character than someone who is a killer who is just another prick all the time. So I think I would like to have seen a little bit more about the people that were around him. But having said that, there are some pretty harrowing scenes in this film, like you would expect from a Nazi film. But yeah, Malick doesn't hold back when he actually gets his audience to see something. So there is some pretty harrowing moments in this film as well.
Yeah, I felt the same thing. The way it kind of goes in line